Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Factor, a show where we talk about green design and the business of sustainability. I'm your host, Haris, the Green Carpenter, and today is going to be the third episode of Green Factory Unplugged. And today I have my co-host, Mia from Unplug, and we'll be going to talk about what today? Yeah.
So today, a little introduction to Unplug. We are an eco-conscious concept store based in Malaysia, where we support and host over 50 sustainable brands. And it's really to shed light on values such as preserving tradition, social impact, eco-friendly materials. And today we're actually going to dive into a social enterprise. The brand is called Fugeelah, and we have Deborah Henry, who is the founder of Fugeelah, with us today. And really, we're gonna get into understanding the social impact behind her retail brand.
And I think before we get to our guests, can you share a little bit, summarize about the metrics that we are looking and today what we're going to talk more about?
Yeah, so the brands that are curated under Unplug are curated based on 8 eco-conscious metrics. So they fall at least under 2, also looking at their design and quality. And those 8 eco metrics are eco-friendly materials, eco-friendly packaging and procurement, social impact, fair trade, zero waste innovation, and local made. So today, we really want to dive into social impact and local made with Fugeelah.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's bring Deborah in. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. I think today we're going to talk quite, in a way, recent issues as well. We see in Ukraine where a lot of people are being refugees in within a day, and like hundreds of people all over the world as well are having similar problems as well. So before we go into the business, I think we want to see your thoughts on this issue and as well as later share more of your journey as well.
Harith, exactly. I think a lot of us have been, whether we work with refugees or in this space or not, we've been quite consumed with what's been going on in the past week because it really does affect all of us, whether you live in Europe, Asia, or the US, any part of the world. And I think without getting into the geopolitics and getting sucked into that part, because I think 1 hour won't be enough for that conversation. Focusing on more of the humanitarian refugee aspect, I think it really shows us that it is really fragile. Anyone can become a refugee just like that. You can be rich, you can be poor, educated, not educated. You can live in a city, in a village, in a developed country, in a developing country. You can become a refugee. And I think that's a really important point to make for people to realize it's not a faraway problem that only affects somebody else, you know? The second thing is that it really does affect all of us. A problem, what's happening now with Russia and Ukraine will affect Malaysia. It will affect aspects of our economy. It will affect the world, how we travel, how we live. That is something that we really need to come to terms with. But I think another important point is, and what I've been reading a lot on social media, is the narrative with how a lot of the West and how Europeans are talking about this refugee issue. I've been seeing news reporters who have identified refugees as these are people that look like us, that live like us, almost depicting them as being civilized. They have blonde hair and blue eyes. And this is not normal for them to become refugees, implying that it's normal for the Asians and the Africans and the Arabs and the less civilized or people that come from war to be refugees. There was a man that even said, these are not people coming from Syria and whatnot. These are our neighbors, our own Europeans. And I think people forget that Syria, before this recent war, the people there they weren't all these bunch of poor, uneducated, homeless individuals. They were Syria, the economy, the country, there was growth, there was prosperity. And so I think there's been a lot of lessons that a lot of us have to learn looking at this, but realizing that humanity is fragile, and war is never a good thing for many of us. And there will always, children will always suffer the most in war. They are the silent casualty that happen. And I saw a very important quote just quickly the other day, and it's, it says, when the fighting ends, the trauma doesn't. Trauma is generational, and we carry that with us into as we grow up, and it's passed on into the next generation in the nation. So it's war is never good. It affects all of us. It's painful. There's a loss of life, and I just wish our world leaders would not be. I feel like when I watch the news now, it's kind of, I don't even want to watch it, because it's upsetting, it's frustrating, it's insulting, it angers me. I think that our leaders are not focused on what's right. It's still a lot of ego, it's a lot of power. It's who's the bigger countries, who's got the bigger muscles, and not on people. And it's kind of sad that we've just come out of COVID right now, and we're just trying to get back on our feet. We've gone through a hellish 2 years, and boom, we end up in this war that's happening in the middle of Europe. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a heavy topic to talk about.
It is heavy. So let's talk about jewelry.
Yeah, I think on that topic, how is your involvement in the course started, and like what made you make the jump?
Yeah, so I think just starting on that topic, it is heavy. It makes you take and just want to sigh, because I think many of us feel powerless. We feel that we can't do much about the situation, and to some degree we can't. But for me, it was many years ago in 2008. I was doing some work for UNHCR in Malaysia, and we were interviewing families, refugee families, and I met this Somali family not very far from my home in Gombak, and I sat in their home, spoke to them, these 4 siblings, and I saw what their reality was going to be like in Malaysia if they didn't get to go to school, if they didn't get an education, if their lives weren't improved. And as a Malaysian, as a person living in Malaysia, I felt that I had some power and some influence to do something about it. So it started off with a very little, it was not a big bombastic dream. It was a very little idea. Let's give this family tuition on the weekend. And after 6 months, we blossomed into a little school, Fuji School. And fast forward more than 10 years, we've educated over 500 children. And so sometimes it is realizing the power of one person can make a difference. And to me, it's always about taking that first step, understanding the people you're trying to help, working together. It has to be collaborative to try to bring about durable, sustainable change.
Awesome. And so I think Mia, maybe you can start on the more on the juicy stuff, the jewelry stuff.
The juicy jewelry stuff.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so tell us about Fugeelah and the kind of jewelries that you design. We want to know about that a little bit more. And I know that you also do accessories like handbags as well.
Yes, that's right. So Fuji, well, the nonprofit Fuji's been around since 2009. Fugeelah, our social enterprise, our business has been around since 2017. So we're a much newer baby. And it was something that was always important to me. I wanted to think about how we could build a sustainable solution to kind of support the work we do, but also solve some of the problems that we were facing on the ground here in Malaysia. So Fugeelah is really, I guess, a vision of that. And I come from the fashion background. I've been a model in the entertainment, in television since I was 15 years old. So I thought it felt only natural to kind of, I guess, flow into this. And we started off making jewelry, and we work with partners, fashion designers in Malaysia, corporate partners to also design other accessories, which we sell. And what I think about, and essentially we're a brand that's, I think a lot of women nowadays are looking for different ways of how they can spend their money. People are always going to spend money on retail items, right? They make you feel good, and make you feel good in it, and you need to give gifts, and it will continue to happen. So to build a brand where we have a conscious element to us, where there is impact, where people can spend their money and know that every dollar they spend has power. So we really talk about the power of someone's purchase. You make it count, you make it matter, and you're making a change. And that's really the opportunity or the option that we want to give our customers. But it's also for women nowadays who are changing how they live. More and more people, as I'm sure you've seen, Mia, your customer base as well, are conscious about what they buy, where they realize that their dollars are powerful to continue to harm or to help. And so they're making decisions about how they spend their money, and like I said, we're an option to do that. And I think that's proven to be quite an interesting trend, not just in Malaysia, but around the world.
2017, it was really to help support Fuji School project. How was that like? Because I know that some businesses, it's more of by the way, we will, allocate certain percentage to give back to a cause that we're passionate about. Seeing that you started from that approach of wanting to support and fund in a different way through having a retail brand, and in your experience of raising funds, how has running a retail business supported that? Is it stronger than just raising funds and knocking on people's door?
Well, it is two different things. So the fundraising aspect for the nonprofit Fuji is, yes, you're essentially asking people for money. There is a cost to education, and you're looking at how you can raise funds for that. Corporations give with a very different intention with that, but it is hard, and especially when you work with the refugee community and you're in Malaysia, right? So a lot of the funds we have to look for are coming from abroad through grant writing and such. Whereas when running a social enterprise, you're not asking people for charity. You're not asking them for pity purchases. And that's something I always try to be really conscious of and stay away from. I don't want a pity purchase. I want you to buy these pair of earrings because you like them, because you're going to use them, you're going to gift them to someone, but also that it's making a change in somebody else's life, and it's doing good for people and planet. So, but in order to get that, when we started the business, you've got to build a business, right? It's businesses don't become profitable overnight. And if you want to be sustainable, you have to be profitable and balance out people, profit, planet, essentially, and your purpose. So we do dedicate a percentage of our profit. Every item sold, you're looking at 10 to 20% of the profits go to Fuji School. And we obviously have to monitor that over the years. The past few years have been really hard, so we've had to. Obviously, our revenue's not been as high, so therefore your profits get affected. But we're very blessed and lucky that we're still here, coming out of COVID. And we have another impact point, which is also offering job and income opportunities to refugee youth. So we work with young women. They make some of the jewelry, but they also work in the business, and it also opens up doors to other opportunities for them. So it's an income network, hands-on business training for them. And then ultimately it's the funds that are channeled back to Fuji School. But it's also an interesting branding exercise for us because it's a different narrative when we talk about Fugeelah. There's a different kind of people that it appeals to and globally. So it definitely helps the cause as a whole, talking about refugees in Malaysia and globally, but it also helps profile Fuji and the work we do in a different light.
So I wanted to know and learn a little bit more about skills training that you do with the refugees. What are their age, and what kind of training do they get? Do you have vision for them to go beyond a part-time training structure?
So the girls, they are quite young. They're out of high school, either currently studying or transitioning, and they're 18 to like 23, about that age range, and extremely talented girls and very ambitious and driven. So right now it is part-time, just because the skill set of making jewelry is quite specific, and we don't have those tools or skills here in Malaysia. So some products are made by them, and then hands-on business training is really up to their interest. We don't want to force people into situations. It has to be their interest-based, and we were able to get them workshops. They can have trainings, one-on-one trainings with our team, and then also run the business as well when we do pop-ups. So that's kind of our business model right now. It is small. We don't look at, say, quantity of girls, because we rather work with fewer girls, but over a longer period of time, where we can really see that their lives are changed and improved, and yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about, the children as well, since starting Fugeelah and having them involved and, being able to contribute back. We want to get to know who they are. Like, if you have some stories you can share with us, certain individuals that really stood out to you.
I mean, wow, there are currently 200 students at the school from the ages of 4 all the way up to 18, 19. So that's a lot of students. And for me, I think having the school here, being able to be on the ground and so close to the community that we are working to support is very, very important and special. And we're very lucky that we have that, because it really helps you see what people go through. And very often when you do businesses and stuff, you're so focused on how to be profitable, how do we run a business, how do we streamline, how do we be productive, that you get so detached from the actual reason you're doing it. And I think a lot of business owners may feel that way. So for me, it's really good that I see where the money goes, and we see how it's really changing and helping lives, which is very important. In saying that, I mean, what really gets me is when I go into these classrooms and I see a girl who started off with us. She was so shy and timid. She barely spoke any English. And within 6 months, she's transformed. The confidence level of the students being able to come to a safe place where they're valued, where we encourage and push them to have goals, to have dreams beyond the boundaries of Malaysia. We support them to achieve those dreams. We support their families when their families go through difficult situations. And just to tell somebody, you matter, we're here to champion your success, and I really think that actually it seems like a very simple thing to say, but it actually is so transformational for these children and these youth. And there are many challenges in Malaysia because refugees are not allowed to access formal education legally. Their parents or adults can't work legally. Yeah. So they're here over 180,000 of them are actually here, but they're not able to really function as part of society in a very free way. So our challenge is, how do we create all these opportunities for them? Otherwise, living in Malaysia, you can get trapped into a very hopeless, depressing situation. So
I wanted to ask you, like, do you struggle with that? Like, how do you employ refugees under Fugeelah?
So yes, it is still, as of now, not legal to employ an individual who has a UNHCR card as a refugee. While they are protected to be in Malaysia, they're not allowed to work. And we've had many people, companies come up to us and say, I'd hire refugees tomorrow if I could. I'd hire 50, 100. I'm looking for workers. I can't find anyone to work for my business. Malaysians, foreigners, there is no one. And I say, yeah, sure, you can work with refugees, but this is the situation. And you have to explain the full situation to them. And very often they're like, ooh, maybe let me think about it. And then they kind of don't come back to you. So it is a situation that I would ask them how risk averse they are, right? But there are many smaller companies that do work with refugee individuals. I think it's important to know that not all refugees we get caught up with this label, refugee, but they're people. And they have different talents and skills and come from different countries, and all of their stories are very different. So not forgetting that there's actually a pool of resource that is there that you can actually harness, and that pool is currently in Malaysia. Not to forget that. So they kind of waste their time if we're not utilizing them in our economy.
I really applaud you for the work, because I know it's really hard. I mean, we talk about just managing people, but I know once upon a time, I wanted to work with refugees because they had amazing, tailoring skills, embroideries. But one of the issues we faced was that there was a lack of organization in organizing the women together. One, they didn't have resources, equipments. Training is another thing. And also it's the trauma that they carry with them. So it's, difficult personalities or situations that you can be in.
Absolutely.
Talking about commitment. So for a business to think of a sustainable way to employ refugees or work with them part-time even, it's a lot of work. How do you manage that? And I think trauma is the biggest thing, I would say,
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fantastic point to make, because there are so many individuals who end up in a similar situation to what you've been in. And I speak also from experience, right? I've been working very closely with the community now for more than a decade, and I encounter similar challenges. And I do think a large part is they are still living in Malaysia, but they're still isolated. You're not allowed to really integrate with society. There are barriers, invisible barriers, visible and invisible barriers that are there that really prevent societies coming together and working and learning. And even for them to learn English, to learn how things work in Malaysia, how businesses work here. Also for their family members to financially be able to support themselves, so that the mom doesn't go, sorry, I can't come into work today to sew because my child, and then they just disappear, and you're like, oh my God, who's gonna make my thing? You know? And these are some real barriers that are there. So, and it really takes a huge amount of commitment, dedication, and resource to want to then commit to working with these communities in the long run. And that's why for us, we go small. We've done projects in the past where you try to come in and you want to start this big sewing thing, and 20 people, and it's very challenging unless you can really dedicate all your time to it. Otherwise, I would say pick 2 or 3 people that that well enough, that you built a relationship with, that you can trust, and grow with them. And as time goes on, you can slowly bring more people into the fold. But also to your point on the trauma, there is that trauma, there is that risk of being arrested when you travel. There are all these problems. We always say this: if your concern is putting food on their table, being able to pay your health bills, being able to pay your rent, or being evicted, it's very difficult for you to think into the future. I mean, heck, these people are not even going to be thinking about sustainability. Like, what is that? What is a sustainable social enterprise to them? Eco-friendly, conscious, whatever. If you're thinking about feeding your child, it doesn't really matter, does it? And it wouldn't matter to any of us. So we need to always put things into perspective as well, to understand what someone's really going through, what their life is really like, when we want to work with them or help them.
Deborah, I think I want to ask a little bit more in terms of the technicality side. Like for us, we work with refugees as well in terms of some of our products, and like there are certain barriers or problems that we have. In terms of your suggestion, if companies want to employ or work with refugees, what are some of the things technically they can do?
Well, is this the official answer or the unofficial answer?
Whichever is comfortable for you.
Well, I mean, I know there are smaller companies that do hire individuals who are refugees, and they hire them because they're skillful and they're great employees and great members of the team. They figure out ways about how to pay them. And so if you can figure out a way how to get around the payment part, that's fine. There are many ways you can do that. The second part is security. So if you have to travel for your job, are you traveling to a place where you could get arrested or picked up or detained? And also that is a risk the employee needs to take, because if the individual gets picked up, then would you go to the balai to help get them out, right? Things like this. And when you look at it at a bigger scale, so if you look at multinational companies, bigger companies, I've spoken to them and they want to hire like 100, 200 individuals. But I think for them, it's a little bit more challenging because there are more consequences to it. And they have a lot of compliance, right, that they have to adhere to. So that can be more difficult. But in saying this, the government has piloted projects in the past. One was in construction, one was in palm oil, where refugees were working there. And so the government and this is something we've been pushing for many years now, with the government, us as well as other nonprofits and organizations, to allow refugees to work, because we say that if you do, they will contribute, I can't remember how many billion to the economy. So even not from a humanitarian perspective, just from an economical perspective, it actually is a good thing. I would mention though that it also puts the refugee at risk in the current situation, because employers can also not be very nice. So there is exploitation that occurs where I'll hire a refugee, they work for me, and when it comes to payday, I don't pay them, or I pay them less than what I promised. And many refugees feel obviously cheated, disrespected, but also they don't have much in terms of options of who they can go to get help. There was actually a legal case, interestingly enough, a couple of years ago where a refugee individual took the employer to court for not fulfilling the contract, and the refugee won. So it does actually, it's funny because the law is, I guess, a funny thing, right? But even in, can't remember the name of the court, in employment court or something, that actually stands where the contract was broken and therefore the employer was liable. So it's interesting. It's an interesting gray area that people need to be able to explore, right? If you're interested.
I'm just thinking as well from a business perspective, if I were to invest so much time training resources on grooming potential work employees for the business, what happens if they have to just leave in the end? What's the long-term plan? That's always like a question mark, because they might just have to leave, Yeah.
And that's very true. So leave as in to get resettled, right?
Yeah.
And that is a risk that the employer has to take, because that is the reality. And at the end of the day, you want the refugee to be resettled, right? Because that's the better life for them. So the most an employer could do is ask them about, have you heard from UN? Do you know if your resettlement's coming up? Being able to kind of make a guess as to, do you think they'll be for another year, 2 years? But it also then forces you to have, I guess, succession planning, right? How do you create a framework where if somebody else replaced them, that would still work? But I feel you in that is, I've been in the situation before where they've had to leave and then you're kind of left a little bit helpless. But that is why when I'm talking now about our nonprofit, we run we call it the Fugeelah Hired Scholarship Program. So we actually give out scholarships to deserving refugees who want to go to university and get a degree. And there are some amazing individuals here. Yeah. So we recently gave out scholarships to five students at the end of early this year.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's also a question we've asked, right? What happens if they get resettled in the middle of their degree? Does the whole thing go to waste? But we look at it as a lot of them are doing online courses and they can study from anywhere in the world. So the commitment that if they do get resettled, that we will still pay the scholarship and they can continue anywhere. So it forces businesses and everyone to kind of look at what remote working or remote learning looks like, how we can support each other in changing environments as well.
Yeah. I've also got another question. This is coming from, more from retail to customer perspective. Do you actually feel that people support your brand and purchase more because it's supporting a cause, or it's more of like, oh, nice, that's an extra?
I definitely think a lot of people do support the brand because of the cause. Firstly, I would hope. Well, no, I know they do like the product. They do like the product. They think it's different. They think it's different to what's sort of in the market already. But I think importantly, there is a differentiating factor that there is a big impact. And like I said, if you're going to buy a pair of earrings, you're going to buy it from somewhere. If you can buy it from a brand where you know that you're supporting something bigger than yourself and you like the product, why not? But I also think that comes down to a lot of branding. And I think this is something you're obviously very, aware of as well, right? You need to have the kind of right branding, the right messaging. You want to be a cool chic brand for women in the 21st century. You want to speak to your audience the right way. And yeah, but I do think it's a balance in that there are people out there as well who just like the product and then they find out like, oh, there's a nice message to it. That's kind of cool too, right?
Yeah, like definitely I think the first time conversion, right, for customers who don't care, but then it's like, oh, that's a great extra point. Happy with my purchase. I think they're that is like such a good segment as well, because they do come back because of it and they start considering this for their next purchases.
Mm-hmm. And it makes when you give gifts, it makes giving gifts special, right? And so even looking now at corporate gifting, which is something that I think Hearth does as well. You want to go to China and you want to have a budget of like 10 ringgit and you want to get the cheapest thing you can find, that's fine. But if you want to spend a little bit more, give something that has meaning, it has a purpose. You're thinking about the planet, you're thinking about people, you're thinking about impact. And statistics show that employees actually care about this. More and more people actually want to work in companies, for companies that think about its social impact, think about social investment, and they want to be involved in things. And so you give a gift that actually has some thought to it, matters. And so we recently made a laptop case for a client. Recently, we used local Malaysian batik and songket from small business owners, so supporting Malaysians as well, local small business owners, but also the fact that now percentage of the profits making that item go back to the school. I think it's a fantastic story to tell.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I also,
Deborah,
yeah,
I want to ask first. Sorry.
Sure.
In terms of the industry itself, like if we talk about fashion, it's one of the most competitive and one of the most unsustainable in a way as an industry. So like how do you deal with the competition and also the pace of fashion?
Yeah, it's very true. Fashion industry contributes to a huge amount of waste, and we are very conscious of the role we play in that. What can we do to not use more plastic? And even in our packaging, I mean, even a simple thing like our packaging, how do we give an exciting packaging, but why are we contributing to waste? So we try to be minimal. We try to be honest with our customers about, this is why we use what we use. We don't want to waste unnecessarily. And to be fair, to be honest, you throw it away, right, when you get it. So conversations like this that need to be had. Even in terms of what we make, we did a collaboration with Kun Hui, a Malaysian designer. We used all of his leftover fabric to make bags. And these were fabrics that would have ended up literally in the landfill, right? So we use them to make bags. And I think COVID has actually pushed a lot of the retail world, fashion world, to actually really rethink fashion and rethink what they make and how they make things. And very importantly, smart partnerships and collaborations. I think that is such a key thing that has to happen more and more between businesses. I think we often exist in our silos and we draw these lines and, oh, this is who we are, social enterprises, and everyone else does their own thing. Whereas realizing that we need to work with the not such conscious brands, we need to work with the corporations, and in an effort for all of us to take those steps forward, right? Because let's be frank, people aren't going to just change overnight. So it is these little baby steps in the right direction. And I think our enterprises that we're running are testament to that.
With your with Fugeelah, do you guys just do purely B2C, or how much of corporate gifting do you do? Do you export?
So corporate gifting is kind of new for us. We did a few projects for clients last year and kind of felt, okay, maybe this is something we should explore a little bit more. So this year is we're going to take the time to do that. We do a lot of B2C, and that's kind of our focus. We want to be able to sell through our website. We don't want to have to open stores, and that's a very heavy footprint for us. But also working with different partners. So like we stock at Unplugged in Bangsa Village. We have stockists in Malaysia. We have stockists in Singapore, in Tokyo, in Dubai, in Europe as well. And I think that's a nice way to kind of get your brand, your presence felt in other countries. And of course, because our message is a bit more unique than your average jewelry brand, it's being able to communicate with influencers, people that are aligned to the kind of messaging that we have to support what we do.
Right. So I've just got one last question. I know this is something that I struggle with. In running Unplug, everyone is like, why is sustainable products expensive? It's not for everybody. But, that's a long conversation. It takes a lot of education in terms of giving them transparency of what happens behind the supply chain, right? And especially with working with small, slow production.
Yes.
Most of our brands are very small. Do you face the same thing? Like, do people ever question price point?
Well, the fact is, someone can find a pair of earrings or one of our jewelry pieces, maybe not the exact thing, but something quite similar to it somewhere on the web, right? You can probably find it if you look hard enough. And it could probably be for maybe a fraction of what they would pay us. And that's going to exist, and we can't fight that. But I agree with you. What we bring to the table is the unique designs. It's a small female-led team, where we pay everyone something that's fair. We want to support the girls that work there and give them a fair wage. And like you say, your production quantities are small. And we're conscious about like where, while we don't have a full transparency in terms of every aspect of our production, we're very conscious to ask the right questions. Like, where is this coming from? How is this made? What materials can we get? And so because of all of these various factors, yes, your product is not going to be necessarily the cheapest in the market. But I think that's going to be a journey that we all need to take. I think as fashion changes, as things perhaps become less expensive, more accessible, then you'll see societies shift in that direction. And also the fact that we're so used to fast fashion and things being so cheap that is our benchmark. So I think it's a lot of perception changing. Like, why is this top only 20 ringgit? Maybe we need to ask that question. But that's always going to be a challenge, because I can even equate it to the food industry, and you look at how healthy eating can sometimes be more expensive than eating whatever, and that it will always affect the poorer part of society, where they will not be able to access that slightly healthier market. So it is something. It is economics, I think, and like you say, it's a much bigger topic. But I think it's something we're all conscious of. Our goal is to not make a super duper expensive product. I want our jewelry to appeal and to be affordable to the average person. I want someone to be able to aspire to own something from Fugeelah because of what we do.
It's been really well received. I think the quality, everyone loves the quality of the earrings. There are some earrings that are light, but I feel like your small earrings, there's actually weight to it, and it feels like it's good quality that'll last. So we're really happy to have you guys on board.
Thank you, and we're happy to be with you. And the fact that you bring together so many edgy, cool, fashion-forward brands, lifestyle brands, and people doing so many amazing things. It's very inspirational.
Cool.
So I think before we end the session, I would want to have your last thought in terms of your industry or working with refugee.
Well, I would love to see a world or a Malaysia where individuals who are refugees here would be able to work legally, because I really feel that this is not sustainable. Charity is not a sustainable solution for people, for marginalized and disadvantaged people. It is a necessary tool to help them get back on their feet, but ultimately people need to be able to be supported to take care of themselves. And so we need to shift the situation from handouts to giving people a hand up so that they can build their own lives for themselves and their families. And so for me, that's a very important thing, something that the bigger message and goal that Fugeelah, myself advocate with our government, with people in Malaysia, because we see that as being the real game changer in this conversation. And I think will affect a lot of the conversations we had earlier to those points. So that would be my first thing. The second thing would be to people listening and watching. Look at ways in your own individual life, in your home, in your schools, in your work, with your friends and families. The conversations are so important because that changes mindsets. When people start thinking differently, they meet someone who thinks differently. That's what gets the ball rolling for people to start making changes in their shopping habits and making changes in how they view other people. I always say, Malaysia is a beautiful, diverse, multicultural nation, and there is so much that's different around us. We should really embrace it, enjoy it, appreciate it a lot more, and realize that there's a lot more to gain than to lose.
Awesome. So Facebook user Adrina said, "Hi Deborah, hi Haris and Mia. Hi Adrina, thank you for tuning in." And with that, I would want to reiterate back why we do the show. So the green factor is for us to develop local knowledge and have conversation with individuals such yourself, where when we talk about sustainability or ethical, a lot of the research that we will find are mostly of from the Western countries and all that. So we need to develop more local knowledge, more local stories, so that more people can relate to it. So like if he's in Malaysia and he's doing it and doing it well, then why I cannot do? So that is why I'm thankful and happy for you to share your thoughts and experience. And for the viewers, if you want to know more about Fuji, you can go to their IG, Fuji at org. If you want to know about the products, it's Fugeelah. So you can also buy them at Unplugged in Bangsang if you wanna look and feel. Because right now a lot of people they like to look at it first, right? So do visit Unplugged. And before I end the show, I would, if you find value in our conversation, do share it with your friends and family, and be part of the conversation for change. Do join our community in Facebook, We Design Malaysia, and contribute to the conversation, be part of the change. And with that, thank you very much for tuning in and have a green week ahead. Bye bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.